Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 18th of May. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Extremely hot weather conditions are believed to have contributed to the outbreak of several large fires today. Road 1 between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv was partially closed after a blaze broke out near Lifta. Firefighters and 2 planes have been involved in efforts to extinguish the flames. Meanwhile, strong winds fanned the flames of another blaze near Hadera and the Wadi Ara area. 11 teams of firefighters and 4 airplanes have been deployed to battle the blaze. In yet another fire at the Western Galilee kibbutz Beit HaEmek, crews have been struggling to keep it from spreading to 3 nearby factories. As the sizzling Sharav Desert heat wave continues to besiege the country, firefighters remain on alert in other sectors as well, as are paramedics, as temperatures today reached 42 Celsius in Beersheba and Eilat, which is a whopping 107.6 for those of you who think in Fahrenheit. It was 41 degrees at the Dead Sea, 40 in Tiberias, 39 in Rehovot, 37 in Haifa, and 36 in Tel Aviv. In Jerusalem, we didn't have quite as much to complain about, where it was a more tolerable 34. Residents everywhere are being urged to take precautions to avoid dehydration and sunstroke. Bans against the lighting of any outdoor fires are in effect in the north and center of the country to prevent the eruption of any further blazes. The Israel Electric Corporation is also working hard to keep up with the demand due to the heavy use of air conditioners for those seeking relief from the heat. Details of the biggest and most important organized crime cases ever conducted by police will be revealed in the coming days. Police Commissioner Yochanan Danino told the Bar Association conference in Eilat that the investigation is being led by the Police 433 unit with the involvement of other domestic and international law enforcement agencies. 50 suspects have so far been arrested, including several of the most notorious crime figures in the country, some of whom will be brought to court for a remand hearing tomorrow. According to police, the case, codenamed 512, involves a vast series of alleged violent crimes and drug offenses. The absolute gag order about the investigation was lifted after Danino effectively broke the story during his speech. A mass rally by Israeli Jews of Ethiopian descent is getting underway on Tel Aviv's Rothschild Boulevard at this hour, in the largest to be held by the group against racism and alleged police brutality. Hundreds of officers have been deployed to the area to maintain law and order among the 1,000 expected participants and prevent potential violence that could break out if some of the protesters try to obstruct nearby roads, as they have at past events. Leaders of the group are vowing to keep the rally peaceful as they try to communicate their message that racially motivated police violence will not be tolerated. They also called on law enforcement officers to exercise restraint, but did acknowledge that the blocking of roadways does disrupt the national routine because they say racism here has also become routine. Turning to the government, and the new Minister of the Interior, Silvan Shalom, has been given added responsibility and is now in charge of negotiations with the Palestinians as well as relations with the United States. Here with all the latest is IBA's political correspondent, Eli Wogelenter.
Silvan Shalom seems to be emerging as a growing power within the new government. Not only is he Interior Minister and Vice Premier, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has put him in charge of the peace process with the Palestinians, should they be restarted, and also the point man in strategic dialogue on Iran with the United States, should those talks be restarted. Shalom will be taking over the role of negotiator with the Palestinians, filled by former Justice Minister Tzipi Livni in the last Knesset. Speaking to Israel Radio, Livni says she has not yet met with Shalom to brief him on where she left off, adding that she would be willing to assist any minister who would seek an agreement with the Palestinians. But she said the appointment of Shalom will not improve the position of the international community on Israel. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is coming under fire from the right and the left, and it's only the second working day of the new government. In remarks last night, the Prime Minister said that Israel's answer to terrorist attacks aimed at its citizens should be to continue construction in Jerusalem. We are determined to go after the terrorists and stand as a fortified wall against those who wish to harm us, Netanyahu said at the annual Jerusalem Day ceremony at the Merkaz Harav Yeshiva. And we have another decisive answer. We keep building in Jerusalem all the time. But Likud MK Gilad Erdan, who chose not to join the new cabinet, criticized Netanyahu, saying, "We need to build in Jerusalem, not talk about building in Jerusalem, but actually build. Building in Jerusalem should not be a response to an event or a terror attack. It should be routine." He added that Israel should build in every neighborhood, including Gilo and Har Homa, without being deterred by or afraid of international pressure. And Gideon Sa'ar, the former Likud minister who announced a timeout from politics last fall after hitting a glass ceiling under Netanyahu, said this is the day to say in a clear voice that we should build massively and significantly in all parts of Jerusalem. This is the time to do it. Enough talking, let's build. Netanyahu also has come under criticism from the left after firing Communications Ministry Director Avi Berger over the phone last night. The move reportedly reflects the tension between Netanyahu, who is currently the acting communications minister, and the man who appointed Berger. That would be the outgoing Minister of Communications, Gilad Ardan. Writing on his Facebook page this morning, opposition leader and Zionist Union chairman Isaac Herzog accused the Prime Minister of taking a page out of the playbook of repressive regimes in the region, saying, "Did he fire the Communications Ministry Director over the telephone so that everyone will know the new boss has arrived? He should not be allowed to do this." Aaron?
Thanks for that report. And in other news, the annual Jerusalem Day flag procession in the Old City was interrupted by incidents of violence, although police are describing those disturbances as relatively minor compared with recent years. We get more from IBA reporter Alexander Jen.
Clashes broke out in Jerusalem's Old City as an estimated 30,000 Israelis participated in the flag dance march to celebrate the liberation of Jerusalem from the Jordanians in the Six-Day War. Approximately 3,000 police were deployed in the different areas of the Old City in cooperation with event organizers to monitor the march. For the most part, the event was peaceful as participants waved national flags, danced, and sang through the streets. The majority of the clashes took place at Damascus Gate. Police on foot and on horseback broke up minor confrontations and stone throwing by Arab residents during the celebration. I spoke with police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld earlier today, and he said that general tensions provoked the clashes, but overall, there were no major acts of violence.
There were no major incidents that took place yesterday. That's due to the fact that the police had separated and there was a clear division on the ground level between those that were marching and celebrating. There were a number of incidents that took place with local journalists that we had to deal with and protect them, but altogether a number of incidents were relatively small and relatively low. Unfortunately, we dealt with a number of incidents that took place around the Damascus Gate where there were local Israeli Arabs who threw stones and bottles as well, unfortunately, at police officers who quickly responded. Altogether, 6 arrests were made and 2 police officers were injured. In general, I can tell you that there were many more disturbances leading up to the march and the parade. Last year, police units had to respond to stones that were thrown at the units and as well as at people that were involved in the celebration. So we had to use stun grenades last year. This year, we only used police that were on horses to move the crowds away and make a clear division in and around the different areas. So the incidents were relatively under control in comparison to the security measures that were prepared ahead of time.
The flag march on Jerusalem Day has become a traditional time when nationalist views on the political future of the Israel capital rise to the surface. Fortunately, this year, political agendas did not overpower the celebrations. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
Hamas is expanding its subterranean network of terror tunnels, including one that may penetrate into Israeli territory. This warning from Zionist Union MK Omer Bar-Lev, who is a member of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. The former IDF commander called for the government to immediately destroy the underground passages without delay and accused Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon of indecision in failing to take action to thwart the threat posed by the tunnels. Bar-Lev strongly cautioned against waiting until the expansion of the networks get to the state that they were in ahead of Operation Protective Edge last summer, when Hamas terrorists used them to infiltrate the south and stage attacks against troops and civilians. The IDF has decided that female soldiers cannot serve in tanks. The decision follows testing conducted by the Army to determine what additional military positions can be opened up to female troops. Defense officials based their conclusion on findings that physiological demands of operating tanks exceeds the capabilities of most women. They added that male and female soldiers should not serve inside the same tanks because the teams must work together for many days at a time, and there wouldn't be any way to provide appropriate conditions or privacy for the women. The same explanation has been given by the Navy as to why women are not allowed to serve on submarines. The contested city of Ramadi has fallen to the Islamic State as Iraqi government forces abandoned their weapons and armored vehicles in their flight from the provincial capital. The setback comes despite intensified U.S.-led airstrikes. The military ordered that reinforcements be deployed to the area in overnight operations in attempts to drive the ISIS forces back with little success. We get more in this report from IBA's Dennis Zinn.
Bodies are scattered in the streets of Ramadi in central Iraq. Local officials reported that Islamic State carried out mass killings of state security forces and civilians. This resident of the city, who was lucky to escape alive, spoke of hysteric chaos and carnage. At least 500 civilians were reported killed up to now. With defeat looming, Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi pleaded with security forces not to abandon their posts across the Anbar province. He dispatched reinforcements, apparently fearing the extremists could capture the entire region. Ramadi, the provincial capital, is the first major city to be seized by ISIS in over a year. And for yet an unknown reason, up to 8,000 residents of Ramadi who fled their homes are being denied access to safety and shelter in Baghdad. They were stopped near the Biz Bridge on the Euphrates River, some 65 kilometers out of the capital. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry referred to the fence in Ramadi at a news conference in South Korea. Kerry said that he is confident that the militants will be driven out of the city.
Their communications have been reduced, their funding and financial mechanisms have been reduced, and their movements, by and large, most certainly where there are air patrols and other capacities, have been reduced. But that's not everywhere. And so it is possible to have the kind of attack we've seen in Ramadi. But I am absolutely confident in the days ahead that will be reversed.
But local Iraqi officials are not confident that the US-led airstrikes will have the required effect. In light of the army retreat, they've begun mobilizing paramilitary forces whom they believe will be more motivated to fight for their families and for their homes. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
Here at home, efforts have reportedly been intensified to find a solution to the labor dispute at Israel Chemicals, which was the main spark for yesterday's demonstrations in the South over planned layoffs. Management at the plant and the Histadrut Labor Federation have reportedly neared an understanding that just 40 workers at its southern facilities will be fired instead of the 115, and that even those that would be fired will be postponed until the end of the year and include enhanced retirement packages. The talks come as thousands of protesters demonstrated, and the municipalities of Dimona, Yerucham, and Arad shut down all services, including schools. Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to head up a task force on ways to invest in the Negev and held meetings with his new finance minister, Moshe Kahlon, economy minister, Aryeh Deri, and Dimona mayor, Benny Biton. Despite the extreme heat wave, there haven't been any recent concerns over a shortage of water, and as we hear from Robert Martin Fletcher of PBS Television, the combination of desalinization, conservation, and reuse has made water deficiency a thing of the past.
For decades, Israel and its neighbors diverted the Jordan's flow to supply drinking water and water for crops. While the river is down 95% from its historical flow, there's hope that someday it could return to its former glory. That's because Israel today has more water than it needs. It's gone from drought to water surplus in just a few years. Impressive anywhere, but especially in the arid Middle East, one of the driest regions in the world. For years, Israel's water authority ran public service TV ads like this one. Israel's drying up, she says, as her face begins to crack. Save water. Now the ads have been discontinued, not needed anymore. Through a combination of recycling, conservation, and most recently, desalination technology, removing salt from salt water, Israel not only has plenty to drink, but potentially plenty to share. And that could be good news for easing tensions in a region where water is often the source of conflict. Israel is already easily the world leader in water reuse, far outpacing the rest of the world, including the United States, vastly improving Israel's ability to turn salty water into fresh drinking water. In 10 years, Israel has built 5 desalination plants along its Mediterranean coast. in Ashkelon, Ashdod, Sorek, Palmachim and Hadera. Each cost around $400 million. They're privately owned and sell their water to the government, which sells it on to the people. Together, the desalination plants provide up to 50% of Israel's drinking water.
The Israelis have achieved something extraordinary. 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was all about save water and bath together, and now they've got more water than they need.
It is remarkable. It's been a slow process. So Israel's leadership in treating sewage has taken place over the last 15 years. The breakthrough has been in the development of membrane technology for desalination, because that breakthrough in technology dramatically reduced the cost of desalinating seawater.
From about $1 a cubic meter to about 40 cents.
Exactly, to less than half the cost.
10 miles south of Tel Aviv, the Sorek plant, open only 18 months, calls itself the world's biggest seawater desalination plant of its kind. It can produce more than 600,000 cubic meters of drinking water a day, enough for 1.5 million people, almost a fifth of Israel's population. Avshalom Felber is CEO of IBA Technologies, which built the Sorek desalination plant.
This is where the water from the Mediterranean enters the plant.
Exactly. Under here, there's a deep pit going about 70 meters down, where all this water is collected, and it comes by gravity from the sea, just under sea level. The pumps here lift it from here, from this pit, to the pre-treatment area.
From pre-treatment, the water moves through a series of smaller and smaller screens and filters. Then the water's piped into this complex of buildings, where a fine membrane is used to remove the last bits of salt and other minerals.
There's about 2,000 pressure vessels here that shoot water down through the membranes at a pressure of 70 atmospheres. Halfway down, the water becomes drinking water.
The desalinated water finally passes through these pipes to enter Israel's water grid. This tap is always open to check at every instant the quality of the water that Israelis will drink.
45 minutes ago, this was seawater, and now drink it and see how tasty it is. You like it? According to spec?
Still, there are questions about its environmental impact. Very salty water is a byproduct of the process, and it gets dumped back into the Mediterranean. Environmentalists say there's not enough information to know the long-term impacts that might have on sea life. And the process is energy intensive, consuming around 3% of all of Israel's annual electricity output.
Taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Even though the heat wave is not likely to break until Thursday, we can expect a slight drop in temperatures in the coastal plain tomorrow, although it will remain steamy in the mountainous and inland areas. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, same time, same channel, when Aryeh O'Sullivan will be here with the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.